Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Blue Heart Podcast with me, Lieutenant Joe Pangaro. I want to thank you all for tuning in and remind you of our sponsors right off the bat. So first of all, you can see up front here, we have the Blue 360 Media Company. They are the publishers of everything and everything you would ever need in law enforcement, state-by-state manuals, my books, all kinds of other material. They are the go-to publisher for law enforcement, and also medical essential diagnostics. Currently, they're a New Jersey-based organization, and what they do is any first responders or any state employee, state or municipal employee in New Jersey can go to their facilities, and you get a soup to nuts physical checkup so you can try and keep yourself alive throughout the course of your career and enjoy your retirement. So I want to throw a shout out to them right away. Now, today, I have a retired sergeant from South Florida. We're going to find out all about him. Glenn Topping. Glenn, welcome aboard to the Blue Heart Podcast.
Thank you, Joe, for having me. I appreciate it.
Yep. Now, first of all, I see you got a hat on, United States Army. You're military also, is that correct?
Yes, ex-sergeant with the military police.
Outstanding. So thank you for your service, because you know what?
Thank you.
You and all the other men and women of our military have kept us all safe throughout the course of my life. So I really appreciate it. So you doubled down. You served in the military, then you went and served in law enforcement.
Yes.
Okay, so why don't you tell us a bit about your background?
Okay, well, I was in the military police for about 6 years, stationed in Germany for about 4.5. I was a sergeant, a patrol sergeant supervisor there. When I got out a short time later, I decided to join the local police. Excuse me. I started off with a small department, which eventually got taken up by the sheriff's office, and they became a contract city. So I did 25 years with the sheriff's office here in South Florida and was a sergeant my last 21 years on the job. And prior to the policing, I was a bodyguard in the musical entertainment field.
Really? That sounds. Who'd
Yes.
you guard? Anybody we would know?
A lot of guys over the years when they came down here for their shows, Billy Joel, Neil Diamond, AC/DC, Journey, a bunch of them.
Now, ever have any incidents where people tried to get at him? You had to do anything, or was it pretty much keep them safe?
It was pretty sedate usually. There was once in a while that somebody yelled there was a gun in the crowd, and we had to run up on the stage and take the person off, and once that cleared out, come back on. Other than
Wow.
that, it was pretty quiet. It's the typical rowdy group back then in the 80s.
Right. Yeah. Oh, believe me, I was there in the 80s. I was one of those people running around until I joined the force in 83. I got on the job. So
Okay.
one of the things that I think when we were talking, preparing for our program here, you developed a writing skill, and you write some books, and we'll talk about them. Why books are important for law enforcement. The more you can learn, the more you can read from people like Glenn, who have experience, who've been there before, the better off you're going to be in your career. So when I look through the list of things you have that you're concerned with, one of them I see really important is a topic that's really jumped up to the forefront for law enforcement, and that is suicide for law enforcement officers. Ask me why this is, but the reality is there's the 1 in 2 organizations, the 1 in 2 career paths that lead to the most suicides are law enforcement and dentists. Why dentists? I have no idea. But law enforcement, that's I can kind of get law enforcement. We see
Yes.
some horrible things over the course of our career, and we don't vent them. What is your book about? What's it titled, and what are you trying to get to with that book?
Well, the book is called Fractured Minds, and it deals mainly with police suicides, and I threw in a little bit of suicide in the military also, which is a big issue. What I did is I got with a friend of mine who's a kind of like a therapist, professional therapist, and I started to talk to him about this, and I go, I'm thinking to put something together. It's like a go-to book that other people had their own research on, and they just compiled all their research and how other professionals approach that problem. And the book is still being put together now by the publisher. Hopefully, it'll be out in the next, hopefully, a month or so once they edit it out. And I think once it comes out, it's going to be a pretty good, interesting book too. So you don't have to go to 15 or 20 different sites to find things. It'll all be condensed into one book.
Right. And I think that's important, because what's the statistic? Do you have the statistic offhand? One out of how many officers? I think it was one out of, 300? One of every 300 officers, something like that?
Well, it's probably pretty close to that, if not even more than that, I think. It's just that it seems like it's the what happens is it's not published when somebody in policing commits suicide because they don't count it as an on-duty death. If you were killed in the line of duty, yeah, it's a covered topic. But if you commit suicide, you don't hear about it, so you don't really know the stats because there's nothing that really garners all that information.
Right.
But there are companies out there that are just now starting to do that. But
Right.
many more people commit suicide in police departments than you really realize. Almost to the point that there's more of that than there are that were killed in the line of duty.
Oh, I think the number of suicides is definitely higher. You're starting to see articles out there about police suicide, and you see every couple of weeks you see an officer kills himself, whether it's
Right.
a male or female officer. Now, one of the things that I've noticed and I think is important is that I never imagined suicide for me. That's just not a thought that ever came into my head. But
Me
once
too.
I got into law enforcement, I met some officers that I knew that were some amazing people, and over time they killed themselves.
Yes.
And it was kind of shocking to me. So is there anything, say a young cop out there right now is listening to us, are there things they can look for or things that they should be concerned about? How do we start to prevent this, Glenn?
Well, a lot of the suicides have to deal with several issues. One is domestic issues. Other is financial, and others are criminal investigations. So if you're being investigated for a crime and you go, shit, I'm not going to sit in jail for the rest of my life. I might as well just kill myself. Or if you're in such dire straits financially that I didn't want to do this to my family. I owe everybody money. I'm never going to get out of this hole. My only way out is to kill myself. All right. Um, so when I was a sergeant with the sheriff's office, I had several people I had to talk out of doing this stupid act of killing themselves. Right. And I got that when I was a hostage negotiator on SWAT. I did that for 13 years. I had to deal with people that wanted to kill themselves over that issue, money, financial, or domestic. Or up until recently, there was a couple of people in the sheriff's office that killed themselves by overdosing on narcotics or had a criminal investigation going on. So I would
Right.
always watch for them during roll call or after roll call. I go, "You okay?" I go, "No, I'm having some problems." I go, "Well, do you want to talk to anybody?" "No, I'm all right."
Right.
Well,
And that's part of a problem in our business. If I'm a
right,
plumber in the plumbers union and I have a problem and I go get help, I get to do plumbing on Monday. You go into somebody and say, listen, I'm having some bad thoughts. They take your gun and badge, and that's why people don't
right.
want to come forward.
Yeah, that stigma of having to see a therapist and then getting it spread throughout the agency, it puts a damper, puts the foot down on that therapy. So they're afraid to go through it because they don't want to go through and hey, I heard you getting therapy. What's wrong with you? Are you crazy?
Yeah.
And they don't want to hear that. So,
Right.
but the agencies now they have EAP people, they have the chaplain you can go to. There's several other people, and if you have a caring supervisor, that'll step in. That helps out also.
Right. And you know what? And that's the thing for all of us sitting out there, for the men and women that you put your life on the line every single day. And
Yep.
this is not a random thing that happens to us. The numbers are huge. Like I said, I know three people in my life, and listen to what Glenn was saying. One of them, the first guy that I knew, I didn't know him very well, but I had met him a few times. He was in a neighboring town, and apparently he had an outside relationship outside of his marriage, and it really got nasty and ugly, and he decided to take himself out. And
Yep.
we were shocked by that. The second person is somebody I knew really well. I grew up with him. We played music. I was a guitar guy back in the day before I cut my hair. He was a guitar guy, and he rose to a pretty high rank in his department. And he was having an affair with the dispatcher, and that came out. And the dispatcher then charged him with harassment. And his wife wanted him to leave. He went to his mother's house and killed himself in his mother's house because he couldn't take the stress of it. And the most recent one, which is even after retirement, we are in danger because of the
Yep.
nature of our work. Uh, my training officer, a very good and decent man, had a beautiful career, retired to Florida, was down there, started drinking too much, was stressed out, and then ended up killing himself. And it was devastating to
Yep.
his family and to our whole department to think this is someone we knew all those years we worked with, and nobody called out for help. So, Glenn, you tell me if I'm right or wrong on the right track here. We had gone to some horrific calls as law enforcement, right? We see
Yes.
some bad things. And how do we normally deal with that? What do we do when we see something horrific as law enforcement?
Well, right away, you want to go to the bar.
Go to the
Want
bar.
to go, you want to go out drinking, get drunk.
Right. How about
Uh,
gallows humor, right? Do you ever go to a scene that's horrible and cops start making jokes?
yeah,
And
sure.
I this is this is actually the first thing I ever wrote about. I wrote an article called "The Tragic Toll of Police Work," and it was published in the FBI magazine. And it hit a nerve because basically I had seen it. I was a young cop. I wasn't from the police culture, but I got onto the job. And next thing I know, I see we go to a scene where something horrific happened, and these guys and girls are making jokes. If the outside world heard us, they would think
Yeah.
we were nuts, the way
Oh,
we were
yeah.
talking. But then you realize that that's a way to deal with that stress.
Right.
It's repeated over and over and over again. And if we don't confront it, you go to a scene where a little baby is sexually assaulted and killed. That's
Yep.
a horrible thing to live with. And then you what,
Sure.
go on to the next call, right? Did you ever come across calls like that stayed with you throughout your career?
Well, I have, and numerous times. And unfortunately for me, the last 5 deputies that were shot and killed in line of duty, which is not really a suicide issue, but I was called there as a supervisor on scene and see them after they were shot and killed in the line of duty. And that stayed with me, and it stays with me today, like it happened yesterday.
Absolutely.
But I've been on suicides where one of my civilian employees' husbands hung himself in the garage. And we get to the house and there he is hanging in the garage, and now we have to notify her. And as a sergeant, I was always had to give the death notifications, and it was a horrible, horrible
Yes,
thing to do.
it
And it was
is.
probably one of the worst things I ever had to do. No, after a while, I kind of got immune to all the gore and blood and guts, and I just go there, do my thing, and leave. But I
Right.
never brought it home. That was my issue.
See, and this is what I think the little bit of research I've done. I haven't done the research you have to write a book, and other people that are looking into this importantly, is that repeated trauma. And just like you say, we do eventually, we get jaded to it and we joke about it. We kind of don't think about it,
Yeah,
but we're human beings. And when
yeah,
we see that kind of suffering, it has to take a toll on you. It has to build up on you. So this is what I'm going to say to everybody out there. When I go to police academy and there's 500 cops in the building and I'm teaching a class, I say, you know what? In the course of the career of everybody in this building, one or two or three of the people that you're looking at right now might end up killing themselves. And it could be you, right? Get some help, say something. And this is where I'm starting to see a trend. And you can tell me, maybe you've seen this as you've been doing your research, that more and more departments now are offering counseling after a traumatic event that everybody goes to. Let's get together and talk about this horrific thing that we've seen, a car accident where a family's wiped out, a baby injured, something really horrible. And then we have some help to talk our way through this. Are you seeing that more and more?
yes. But in the bigger agencies, because in the real small departments, it seems like they don't have the money to pony up for these professional therapists to come in or to have them on call. But lately, I would say in the last couple of years, these small departments have been sending their people to the bigger departments and let them deal with them over there. So at least there's somebody there. Because you get to some of these rural agencies that are way out in nowhere land where they really have nobody to talk to. So they have to send them out to the bigger departments and deal with their early assistance people or whoever else they have, a chaplain maybe. So yeah, it's starting to grow a little bit, but it's not where it needs to be.
No, I agree. And that's something that, police chiefs, leaders, sheriffs, whoever's out there, we should be, everybody else has a lobby group. We should be lobbying the federal government that they should find some way to help to provide those kind of fundings. Because mental health, first of all, in America, we don't talk about mental health. We just had this guy shoot up the state of Maine, and
Yeah,
apparently he told people he had problems. He was
right.
considering shooting up places, and nobody responded. Nobody stepped
No,
in. And when we have an officer that says, I'm feeling really bad, I'm down, I might want to kill myself, we
yeah,
should have an immediate reaction. Now, the reaction, of course, is to the officer is negative. Okay, we'll get you all the help you want. Give me the gun and the badge, and you're done. I
right.
know, and I can't think of the state. So maybe somebody out there will think of the state and let me know, because I just read about it, where they are evaluating the problem the officer's having, and they're not necessarily taking their gun and badge right away. They're looking at it. What is it? Their concerns, and they're trying to help them before they do that, because that is a stigma. You don't want to lose your career.
Right.
You don't want to lose your life either. right? Um,
And I remember hearing about that also. But you know what? There's always access to a gun, right? You always go, you take mine, I'll find another one. So there's no way to really prevent it. You can help it. You can try to step in and hopefully nothing happens. But I've had to take guns away from other cops before, and I try to make them understand, hey, listen, you're not losing your job over this. You're going to get somebody, you're going to talk to somebody. And if they feel you're ready to come back, you come back and
right.
you start over again. That's all.
And that's what it should be. I guess the public perception is, though, if you have a cop who's feeling suicidal and you put him out there, maybe they'll shoot somebody they wouldn't normally shoot. But we
Yeah.
know that, cops don't go to work every day to shoot
No.
people. That's not part of
No.
that's not what we do.
It's just
Nobody
the
wants to
opposite.
hurt anybody. It's exactly the opposite. You're right.
Right.
So Glenn, what's the name of your book that's coming out?
It's called Fractured Minds.
Fractured Mind. And where's it going to be available?
Well, eventually, hopefully, it'll be on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and Kindle.
Outstanding. So what I think we'll probably do is we'll get you back when that comes out, and we can look at it, and we'll put it up on the website here as soon as it's available, and make sure people know about it. So what else have you written? I know I saw you sent me some information. You're quite the writer.
Yeah, it's a big pain in the neck too. Well, my first one was called The Hurt. That's a true crime drama. I was involved with back in the early 80s when I was working as a bouncer in this rock and roll club. And we had a drive-by shooting out front and killing one of the bouncers. So initially we put together a movie script about this incident. And then I got with somebody who said, make it into a book. So I did, with somebody with some help. And so now it's a novel. It's been out there for a while. I don't know which one it is. The Hurt.
The Hurt. That's available on Amazon as well?
Yes, Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
Okay, excellent.
I don't remember which list I gave you. Which ones did I send you?
Yes, it was Barnes and Noble, a few different ones that are on there. I'm going to see. Let's see if I can pop this up to myself here without shutting me off.
It was the last mushroom.
Oh, I don't have the picture of it. You sent me the picture of the books.
Yeah,
I don't have that available. But what names do you write under? Because I know some of us as writers, we write under pseudonyms, sometimes real names.
yeah. Well, but my pen name is Josh Scott, and then most of them are under my real name, Glenn Topping.
Okay, so both names are good. I like both
Yeah.
names. They sound professional. But Josh Scott, and you could find them on Amazon and different places.
Yes.
I think this is an important topic. All right. I know we don't want to talk about it. We look at ourselves, look in the mirror, and you say to yourself, well, that's not me. That's not me. Well, you know what? I think a lot of people that end up doing this, taking their lives, don't plan on doing it. And it is not, like I said, this is not limited to here and there. You see almost every week now when it makes the stories, right? Because Glenn, you're right. It doesn't always get out there, but law enforcement officers are killing themselves at a great rate, and it's a terrible tragedy to our profession. We dedicate our lives to helping other people, to serving the community, doing the right thing. Get the help you need, right? If you know someone who's having a problem, get them some help. We need to change this statistic. We can't have law enforcement be the #1 place that people are killing themselves. Military as well, and I think
Yep.
it's because of the horrible things that we see and we don't deal with them properly. So
Yes.
your agency should have some kind of program involved. This started with us in our department. We had a couple of really bad accidents on the highway where some children were killed, and it really affected people. And then I went to this brutal double homicide where the guy cut people's heads off, and it was terrible. And I had been talking about putting something together. We were lucky. We had a big human services contingent in our town, and the guy who ran it was very compassionate, loved the cops. And this happened, and we called him, and he says, hey, I'll be there with a friend of mine who's a psychologist. Let's get all the cops and dispatchers too that were involved.
Yep.
Let's talk about the scene, because the scene was brutal. Seeing people's heads cut off.
Yep.
You think, oh, I'm a cop. It's no big deal. These things are horrible.
Yes.
And all of us were sitting around, and everybody's kind of talking about how, and the cops were joking. They were making jokes. Oh, I see this, that, and the other. And then one salty old dog, cop's been around for a long time. He sat there and he goes, yeah, it's terrible. He goes, but when I saw the old lady's head laying there under the table, man, that really shook me. I dreamed about that a couple of times, and that opened the floodgates. Then everybody was willing to talk because the senior guy was willing to say something. And I think it really helped cleanse that horror out of everybody so that we could move on from it. And that's what we need to have. You need to have that in place in your agency, some type of event counseling. When something happens, talk about it, get it out,
Yes,
right? Don't you think?
absolutely. And the problem today, though, is now with all the body cams and people make these off-color remarks, you know what's going to make the news.
Yeah, of course, of course. So we got to be professional,
You
you
got it.
know, but we're human beings and we're in an extraordinary career, right?
Yes.
I always say we have a backstage pass to life because we see things and do things. Regular people would never believe the things we see and do. And
No.
it can get emotional. It can get difficult to handle. It can get overpowering at times. And sometimes it can lead people to take their lives.
Yes. Too
Glenn,
many times.
I want to thank you very much for coming on. And when that book comes out, let me know. We'll get you back on here and we'll
Okay.
push it out more. But for right now, look up Glenn Topping, and you can find his other works on Amazon, Kindle, and at Barnes and Noble. That's pretty good. Glenn, thanks for
Yeah.
being here.
Thank you very much, Joe.
All right, everybody. We'll see you the next time. Remember, be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. All right. Excellent.